It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday, yes, we are talking anti-male censorship. I am going there because I sat with this last week, and the place where I landed with all the excitement going on in games is that where I suspect it will eventually land is some sort of curation that games that apparently prop up the patriarchy will continue to experience censorship, while games that seem to, dismantle the patriarchy will not. And y'all know that, well, I'm a ostracized feminist because I'm sex positive and, essentially libertarian. I don't believe that giving governments more power is ultimately good for women. And I don't believe that just trying to shove something into a deep, dark corner where it's seen as taboo, there is no evidence that actually leads to better treatment of real life women. Domestic abuse and femicide way predate the internet. The places where femicide is the biggest problem, that's the murder of women, essentially because they're women and violate some sort of modesty or obedience norm, are places in the developing world that do not have Xbox Live, okay? So I guess it's PSN now that's the dominant force. But, I mean, remember the whole Helldivers 2 controversy? And some people were like, I can't get a PSN. It's not available in my country. Yeah. So now I'm not trying to make certain countries out to be, ignorant backwaters. It's not the whole country. But these issues aren't happening in cities the way they are in very remote communities that don't even have indoor plumbing. So this idea that, harnessing and censoring fantasy is gonna make men behave better, I don't agree. What I believe is that, okay, have your smut games that I don't understand. And to be clear, I don't understand a lot of the stuff that's for not straight people either. I'm removed from everything because my kink is going a week without somebody insulting me or telling me I'm evil. I know that's unrealistic, but oh geez, do I fantasize about that. That was clearly a joke. But it's kind of not, is it? Because a lot of these LGBTQ plus games that also deal with things like polyamory also have this sheen on them that conventional concepts of good and bad are somehow, they're trying to be edgy with everything. And I wish we could just have something that was vanilla and inclusive. And, you have your polyamorous bear men who don't understand consent, okay? I would like to be able to do hero runs. That's my kink. Being rewarded for my idea of what is good, right? That's all I ask. And I do think the system works best if everybody has something they like, instead of these weird clumpy trends where the industry takes absolutely the wrong lessons from some of these games that do really, really well. Everybody thinks that, people like games like Elden Ring, so let's make everything a Soulsborne format. Well, no, the thing about Elden Ring and Dark Souls 2 and even a game like Bloodborne is it had a design directive and it stuck to it. It didn't try to be all things for all people. And it was a really cool world. Like, I really think that the world building had a lot of people push through some of the jank. And then, of course, they take the exact opposite reaction to a game like Baldur's Gate 3, where people played, for one, the very cool take on multiplayer, where everybody assumes a character and stuff like that, instead of it just being like an MMO or like a PvP thing. It's like cooperative multiplayer. People like cooperative multiplayer. Also, turn-based CRPGs can still sell. No, everybody's all about the kinky bear man vampire drow twins incest foursome. That's not primarily why people like the game. In fact, and in my circles, people don't like those elements, and they'd even like to see some of the, bondage and rough play done a little better. They like the game as the whole, not those elements. So the industry has this bad habit of taking all the wrong lessons from things because it's like follow the leader, and they think you have to do certain things to sell. And you don't. I mean, a lot of the people I know who liked Baldur's Gate 3 also liked Dragon Age the Veilguard if they bothered to play it. The problem is the marketing on that game was so bloody bad, a stink got on it. And so the industry is really bad at taking these lessons. And we are still in the hangover from 2014 to 2016, where the industry seems to believe that any woman who doesn't have the proportions of, I don't even know how to describe it anymore, but it's this very slim, almost like unhealthy slim build. And I'm not going to get into BMI because that's something of a crock. But, it's this, skinny to slightly muscular, right? Oh God, don't let Ciel look like a real farm girl, because I don't know if you've seen those ladies. I live by them. They are built, right? And by the way, no one in 1906 would have a bare midriff, but anachronism, there's this must appeal to men, must make hot, and yet at the same way, we don't want to appeal to those kind of men. And unfortunately, those kind of men are the ones who actually don't think I'm gross and ugly because, I'm a 32H bra and I'm bottom heavy. I have 43-inch hips. That's still gross by gaming standards. And that's a problem, right? Because that's going, there are good women who aren't super modest. I mean, God, Ciel in Clair Obscur, great game. You guys know, you saw men liking stuff, but there's a line, if you turn her down as verso for sex, it's like, she's not used to being rejected. I used to hang out with a lot of models. I still hang out with industry people. I don't know of anybody who's not used to being rejected. I don't care how hot a woman is. She gets rejected. That was just, what was that? But there's this, even with female writers on games, and sometimes when there's a female writer, it's actually worse because the female writer is used as a shield for this stuff. And the reason I'm using actually good games is because even the good games feel this pressure. You can have little elf vampires, and you can have polyamorous stinky bear men, and you can have Will, who's part devil and all that stuff, but oh God, don't put in a woman with hips and boobs. That's still censored. And I mean, even Japanese media is being careful with that stuff, and it doesn't even mean the same thing in Japanese media. And it does send a message. I mean, God, I know I'm too old for anybody to care about, but it does send a message to women who say are 20 years younger than me, but built like me when I was 20. It does send a message that they're gross. But we know that we're not the target. Oh no, those girls have to be censored out of media because they might drive men to do horrible things to women. Think about what that is saying about women who just happen to look like that through no fault of their own. I do think there is a role for women who, I mean, the fecundity goddess is a thing going forward. Look at the fairy fountains in Zelda, right? There's an example of a game that doesn't shy away from that kind of body type, and nobody complained. But it's this combination of, oh no, we have to sell to men and proper men, like skinny, vaguely toned women who look sometimes on the young side, gross men like other things. You know, the one example is Karlach, who, pardon the pun, is the hottest girl in Baldur's Gate 3, but tragic ending. So, and I mean, again, that's my opinion, right? If you like Shadowheart, okay, but not every guy likes women who look like Shadowheart. But let's face it, Shadowheart, normal male desire. That's what the industry seems to think. Anything else is weird, and you have to leave it to the Japanese these days to put women in who don't look like that in prominent roles and go, well, we like this. We think this is beautiful, right? Because I can't even give Assassin's Creed Shadows this, because now is too young to really factor into this discussion, you know? And I think it's so weird that people fixated on her looks because she's ostensibly attractive by any metric. And see, there's an example, right? Denying a certain appearance. And yes, there are Japanese noble women in that game who are traditionally beautiful. Some adopt the beauty aesthetic of the time, and people complain they were ugly. So really, the problem guys who just complain and don't just like what they like and play what they like, they're being centered in this whole debate. And guys who just like something a little different or a lot different don't want to weigh in because they don't want to sound like those guys who clearly have some issues. And that's a problem because so men are being silenced. That's another form of censorship, right? Because those guys are being silenced, we're not getting the fullness of opinion where, okay, muscle girls are somehow acceptable because guys at Forbes still stand Abby from The Last of Us 2. But what about guys who like women who are a little bigger in other ways? What about them? Making that abnormal when you look at the science, it's really a hip to waist ratio thing, and plenty of completely respectful, regulated men like a different beauty aesthetic. And in an ideal place, everything would be represented. And so we wouldn't have to have these fights about this stuff. But it's not. And, you know, Death Stranding 2 is an example of, okay, he's got photorealistic women who are uniquely striking looking. Fragile is striking looking. She's not, traditionally hot because she's got, the bags under eyes and things like that, which I actually think add to her appeal, but she's not idealized. They just take people who look like they do and put them in games. And so there's actually a fairly diverse slate of women. So there's one anime girl in it, and everybody's like, no problem, this is fine. And if it's a game all of anime style, well, that's an anime style game, this is fine. If we have enough diversity, then we don't have to worry about counting the number of different type of characters. So, the fact that the game's set in Australia and they bother to put in black women, that's great, right? They made the attempt. And that's the ideal, right? That's where we want to get to. That we have maximum freedom, not shackled by this idea that somebody's going to be considered against women or creepy if they put something in. And that very rigidly enforced norm regarding presumed male desire is creating an environment where fewer types of women get seen. And this is, I've been watching a lot of British TV lately, and there's way more diversity of body type in British TV than there are in video games right now. And, Britain's the one that's freaking age gating YouTube. So, it's not like they're this pinnacle of free expression. It's just their entertainment tradition is about, can this woman act, as opposed to, is she hot? And that is really where we want to go, because for a lot of guys, talents and smarts, that's the sexy bit. Especially when guys, get in their 40s, they say, I'm not as interested in super conventionally attractive women anymore because I know what comes with it. I've had guys refer to it as they just want to get it out of their system, the dating really attractive women. Not because it's even what they're traditionally attracted to. It's just that is sort of this marker, like achievement unlocked. You are man, dated hot girl, right? This is messed up. This is not fair to anybody. Men are not doing great under this system, but all the censorship is done under the guise of protecting women, and it doesn't. And so it's actually created this backlash, this idea that women are protected in ways men aren't. And the people who truly believe that, it is impossible to shake them of that view, because they can't see, because they're not women, they can't see how that protection is both just lip service and a cage. Because if you don't accept the protection, which means it limits what you can do and say and where you can go and what you participate in, if you go, that's not a shield, that's a cage, well, then you get, well, fuck her, she's a pick-me, I don't care if anything bad happens to her. Trust me, welcome to my life. If you don't accept the help, which is frankly a sort of prison, when you're only safe on women-only cars and in women-only spaces and women-only gyms and women-only, you're not safe. You walk around with this feeling of fear whenever you're not segregated. And somebody like me, who can't handle hearing about Emily in Paris, don't feel comfortable in women's only spaces. And if women do, that's great. If there are some men who only feel comfortable in men's only spaces, well, okay. I think they're as damaged as the women who only feel safe in women's only spaces, but they have the right to exist, right? Notice I said as damaged, not uniquely damaged. And And a lot of women like me know that women can be absolutely horrible to each other, and women's spaces aren't necessarily safer. They, in many ways, can be more damaging to your reputation. You've got to be super careful what you say and who you say it to the point I won't have private conversations. If I got something to say to somebody, I will say it in public, because it's too likely that the conversation, heavily edited to make me look as bad as possible with dialogue done out of order. The last 3 people who did that to me were all women. No, sorry. 3 men, 3 women, 2 men. So more women than men. I've just found that's more likely to happen to women, because when men do it, it's just, okay, he's off. Women, oh, the poor thing, she's so mean. Of course she is. She's a pick-me. She stands up for those horrible men. People really don't understand where I'm coming from with that, because I'm not standing up for those men. I'm standing up for the women that, like me, are treated as dirty or wrong because of these assumptions about men. And yeah, you know what? I'll stand up for any individual. But this isn't about, oh, poor men, just let them have their porn. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? I do kind of support that with moderation. The problem is that some guys are increasingly not moderated. And when you get these guys, like I'm seeing it, right? The guys that really believe that women are protected in a way that men aren't, they're the one that seek out this media where women are getting hurt, because it's like a revenge fantasy. And they want, I've had guys tell me that they want to see women hurt the way men are hurt. They want women to be unsafe the way men are unsafe, so they know what it feels like. And they tell this to me, knowing my history, knowing I'm exactly that. But they're so in their feelings, they don't see what they're doing, or they do and they just don't care. They might be talking to me like I'm one of the guys, and isn't that interesting that the minute a woman isn't protected in their mind, she becomes not a woman. She becomes like an honorary guy or some weird third gender. And I say weird third gender just because it's not by choice. It's not how she may choose to identify. It's just, no, society's putting you here because you don't fit in either box. You're not really a man, but you're definitely not a man, but you're not a woman either because you don't do normal woman things. And this is all a problem. We've gotten away from really interesting female characters like Morgan in Dragon Age Origins is a twist on like the sexy witch. Like, wow, she's actually a human underneath all of that all. We've lost the crones. We get fewer and fewer and fewer of those cool old ladies. We've lost characters like Meryl in Dragon Age because, women aren't allowed to be crazy anymore. Liliana, same way. We've lost really, really complicated characters like Kenzie and Shondi in the Saints Row series, because now everything is about protecting women from something, right? And so either women have to subvert expectations like Abby and be violent fucking maniacs because that says something about subverting expectations, which quite frankly indicates to me some pretty deep-seated misogyny. And there's an example of, woman co-writer, but just because a woman is a woman doesn't mean she doesn't hate other women or hate massive aspects of femininity and have a bit of a let's kill men fantasy herself, right? Something can be misogynistic and misandrist at the same time. Does that mean it doesn't deserve to exist? No, of course it deserves to exist. We have to allow all states of being in art. And that gets through, even though that game is incredibly, brutally violent and makes you participate in the violence. I still remember how physically ill I was because I was playing that game while the Black Lives Matter protests were going on. And you have to keep pressing that square button to beat a black lady to death as Ellie. I was horrified. Oh, but that's the point. Okay, so why can't games with a male character be allowed to horrify? Well, that's not designed to horrify. Are we sure? Are we sure? Because games are about choice. And really good games allow you to feel whatever you want to feel in those moments. And some great game designers like Kojima, game designers, not wrong, Freudian slip, like Kojima Productions, they are very good at getting you to feel exactly what they want you to feel in any given moment in that game because they are persuasive. They're not railroading or coercing the player. Oh, we're going to make you kill a beloved main character and dogs and a bunch of, people whose biggest mistake where they were too loyal to the wrong person. And we're going to make you like it because feminism. Isn't Neil Druckmann a great man? He was born in West Bank, right? Like, that last part backfired. And that's the problem with this stuff. It tends to age like milk. And it doesn't become cheese. So the only way to really create safer environments is to allow this content, even though, we might find it pretty suspect. I mean, there's a bunch of guys out there with Renoir icons now. And that's what was interesting about men liking stuff is because every guy on that panel, and it was a really diverse panel. Every guy on that panel agreed that Renoir was the villain. And okay, some people will side with the villain, but I see what guys say about him. Oh, he was just doing his best. His wife was just crazy and wouldn't listen. That is not the intent of the game. Games like Clair Obscur should not be saddled with the requirement that everybody understands a game that is intended to be complex and intend to let people feel whatever they want to feel. I think things like that perform a service because those guys are walking red flags that think that. Either they got a lot of growing up to do or they're incredibly bitter. You notice I did not say they were bad people. And these are the things that if we encourage conversation and get groups of men together with a positive mandate, like we're going to talk about something we all agree we like, right? That allows people to express and say things that are important to them and feel heard and feel included and feel accepted and, yes, challenged. That gives space to go, well, I didn't get that from that. And I think, games like Clair Obscur do deal with some pretty complex male characters and allowing them to be so flawed and so complicated and so frustrating. We're in the right place when female characters are allowed the same complexity without it being considered anti-woman or it being railroaded. There's nothing complex about Abby. Nothing. She's a psychopath. So we know we're there when we start getting female characters like Verso and Renoir. But in order to do that, we need to let male characters sometimes be idealized, sometimes be atypically masculine, and not have freakouts. But the only way we get that is if there doesn't seem to be some sort of artificial rigging or agenda or censorship. And to be clear, I know there's no vast conspiracy in gaming. Devs are just, in a protective crouch after 10 years of, a shakedown campaign about the way certain women are depicted because they assume that, that's for men. The desire demons are for men. It's like, no, the desire demons said the truth that for some guys, there's boobs. They're kind of not going to notice that she's purple and has horns and red eyes. And those guys are going to go down the wrong path. But that's not all guys, because they have certain guys resisting the desire demons in that. Like, stop infantilizing women. We know that. That's a truth. Express that truth. We're not fragile little flowers who can't see reality. Stuff like that is actually affirming for women like me who get called old and ugly, and people have been making comments about my fertility for 10 years now, and they're not positive. Of course, we know that some men are blinded by tits. Of course we know that. We live in the world. Can we please see that as a cautionary tale and have more stories about other types of women, like Garlac, who are equally, just differently valid, and not turn this into some patriarchal agenda or feminist bullshit. And the only way to do that is, quite frankly, let the straight up male fantasy in too. There's absolutely no way to cut out some content and not other without it seeming like the system is rigged. Now, we need age gating. We need clear labeling. I am a big fan of clear labeling. A big problem with No Mercy is that the developers ramped up what it was in the trailer to sell games. I'm not quite sure why, quite honestly. I'm sure they'd agree now that that was a mistake. Like, who exactly are you trying to attract? I guess anyone with money. But there's some fair criticisms of that tactic there. But the very fact that all not safe for work content got caught, I've been calling it the dolphins in the tuna net, that was predictable. Because when a company's payment processing gets threatened, they're going to take no chances. And instead of it being a conversation that recognizes the nuance, it's just blunt instrument tactics. And every time that happens, everyone loses. It can be a win-win if we allow certain content in, but then we also look at various elements of content and talk about what worked, what didn't, what makes women and men and non-binary people and everybody else feel included, as opposed to, look, you're stepping out of storytelling now and you're soapboxing at this point. And soapboxing isn't always bad. I mean, one of the things I find so villainous about Renoir is he's the ultimate fucking soapboxer. Everything needs to be a metaphor. Everything needs to have a point. That's why I say he's the critic instead of the artist. No one can stand that guy. But this sudden come to Jesus by places like Polygon. First of all, they've had a ton of staff turnover, but also they don't see their own complicity in this spectrum of censorship, when they focus on whether or not certain themes or certain content should be in games at all, instead of focusing on, whether it's well executed. For an example, talking about Halcyon being polyamorous, Bearman Stinky, just in an abstract, instead of being, his concept of consent was bullshit. That's the difference. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Cares session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Please like and subscribe to this channel as well. Thanks for watching. Manly Monday.